Let me ask you all a quick question. How many of you guys can name a great superhero? Well, I'd like to think most of you probably could. Do you have the superhero in mind? What makes them great? Is the Flash great because he has super speed? No, because even some of his enemies have super speed. Is the Flash great solely just because of his backstory? Well, no, because everyone has a backstory. So what makes a superhero great? Well, it would have to be multiple things that would define them. So who do I think is the greatest superhero of all time? Well, let's take a look at the world's finest hero, the Batman. In this, we'll take a look at the impact that Batman has made in the real world. We'll dive into what makes Batman so great. Then finally, we will grapple into the connection that Batman and us have as people. Although Batman has had great intentions, the impact that Batman has made on my life has clearly not been the same that is made on others. Parents of children and even children themselves have admitted that Batman is too scary, too violent, and too harsh. But after the life he has gone through, can you really blame them? The impact that Batman has made on people have affected children of all ages, putting him on clothing, costumes, action figures, TV shows, and movies. Batman has made such an impact that artists and performers have put him on song titles and featured him in song lyrics and even made music videos about him. Batman started on the big screen for decades, starting in the 1960s with Adam West, then on to the 80s and 90s with Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney, then on to the early 2000s being played by Christian Bale, onto the 2010s by Ben Affleck. Then next year he'll be played by Robert Pattinson in the 2020s. So if you think that the impact that Batman's made on the real world for movies hasn't been that impactful, well, just take a look. Numbers do not lie. According to the numbers.com, every live-action Batman film has made a minimum of $100 million in box office. And if you thought that that impact wasn't big enough, take a look at his video games. They've been so good that every single one has a sequel, making over $100 billion in revenue. So what makes him so great? Well, some people would say that he is a terrible superhero because he doesn't have any powers. He's just a lonely rich kid. He's just a guy with a brain and a belt, and he has a no killing rule, which sometimes can come back to bite him. So why do I think it makes him so great? Well, it'd have to be his tragic backstory. When Bruce was 9 years old, his parents were shockingly gunned down right in front of him, forcing him to no longer be a kid anymore. Lucky for him that his parents were the wealthiest people in all the city, so that when he was 15 years old, he traveled the world for 10 years, mastering every single possible fighting style and putting his body at peak physical performance. So that when he returned back to the city that his parents were died in, he became the Batman. Why bats, you might ask? Well, when Batman was growing up, or Bruce Wayne, he was terrified of bats because he fell into a well and they swarmed him. So growing up, he was terrified. And over that 10-year span when he traveled, he mastered to conquer that by becoming what he feared the most. The next thing would have to make him so great would have to be the fact that he's willing to give up everything to be Batman. When people see Batman, they see that he's just a guy that wears a mask. But for him, Bruce Wayne is that mask, and who he really is on the inside is Batman. Most superheroes like Spider-Man, Superman, or Iron Man, minus their abilities, live pretty normal lives, such as going to school, going to work, or building relationships with others. Batman doesn't have time for that. He has little to no friends and puts his love life last. The next thing that have to make him so good would have to be his courage. Batman has no powers, but that makes him the definition of courage because he's underestimated in every single fight he goes into. Knowing that he might not be able to make it out alive, he has overcome some of the most powerful people ever. Some people would argue that there's no connection between us and Batman because he never faces judgment for his actions. He is rarely merciful or forgiving. And some people would argue that Superman is more human than Batman minus his abilities because he lets humanity choose their own path. And Batman, on the other hand, tries to force those morals on others. So the reason I think he's the greatest because of the connection would have to be because the most obvious. He is only human. At any given point, he can jump off a building and die, be shot by a bullet and die from any diseases or any other things. The next would have to be his underdog mentality. He is the most powerless person in all of his team. And for him to be able to come out on top in some things, people love to see the underdog. According to bcm.edu, 2/3 of people love to see the underdog win. He is only human, and that makes him the most underdog about everything that he does. So over this, we went over the impact that Batman has made on the real world. We went over why Batman is so great, which is the most famous out of all of them. And then we finished off with the connection that Batman and us have as people. And I rest my case. Thank you very much.